Hi, everyone. I'm Mayor Philip Kramer. Welcome to another town hall meeting in the midst of this COVID crisis. Um, we have a number of guests. I'm going to actually let Michael introduce everyone. Michael has done an incredible amount of work getting this arranged. And I'm very thankful for him. And I'm especially thankful for our guest, Priyanka Upreti, Dr. Priyanka Upreti, who is the doctor at Robert Wood Johnson who is in charge for the COVID-19 testing. So she'll be here to tell us about some of the science of testing and the differences between testing. So Michael, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, so we're going to do some updates from our regular panelists that are here, and I'm going to go ahead and start with Freeholder Deputy Director Sarah Sui. So Sarah, if you want to jump on and just let us know from the county perspective what's going on.
All right. Well, first I just want to say thank you for everyone who's helped out throughout all different parts of the pandemic. We're seeing volunteers come out from everywhere. During our through our testing center, we're seeing a little over 100 people coming in daily. We have a max capacity of 150. We asked for people to have a script and make sure you register before coming. But that's been going very smoothly. It's about 6 minutes start to finish, and you get your results rather quickly. So, that's the first step in really trying to get a better understanding for where we are. So just, getting all that information and seeing how we can really start looking at our short-term and long-term economic recovery. So we are the first county in the state to actually launch our economic recovery task force. And we're looking at some of the projects that, have slightly changed, but we still have 2 opportunity zones in Somerset County, one being in Bound Brook and the other being in North Plainfield, and other areas that are still looking at revitalizing their downtowns and, making sure all those small to mid-sized business owners are, applying for different programs, whether it's through the Economic Development Authority or on the federal level as well. So keeping them up to date. And for the long-term economic recovery, we're also looking at focusing on innovation. So trying to see if we can have a designated innovation hub within our own region. So that seems to be the key area to really rebuild for a sustainable growth in the long run.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Director. One quick question. I was wondering, with regard to the testing center, how are you all in terms of PPE supplies?
So supplies have been coming in as scheduled, and our OEM coordinators are working very well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us and giving us that update. Any of the panelists, if you feel free after you've presented, if you need to jump off or want to watch from Facebook Live at the mayor's page at Mayor Phil Kramer on Facebook, feel free. All right. So we'll go to, why don't we go to Councilman Galtieri just with regard to any updates with the helping residents effort.
Thank you, Michael. Just quick updates. We are seeing a increase in the number of requests. We do fortunately still have the amount of volunteers to help support that. But I would encourage people to still sign up to, if you are willing to volunteer, sign up to register. This will help us make sure that as hopefully we are able to start going, people are able to start going back to work, that we can continue to have volunteers, because there will still be people at risk that shouldn't be going out. So that you can do either a request for help or or volunteer to help at rhrfranklin.org. And both forms are there. The other items that I just want to quickly touch base on are donations. The food bank still is in desperate need of donations, especially through the virtual food drive. That's done through the Franklin Food Bank website. Or if you do have a surplus of non-perishable items, that can still be done at the Senior Center at 505 DeMott Lane. I know the mayor sent a post about the masks, about us having a surplus of masks. One thing I want to clarify is that Salt Foundation, which has been doing helping supplement and doing roughly two drive-through food distributions a week. They do have volunteers though that could use masks. So if you have not the N95s or the operation or surgical masks, but if you're willing to donate one of the sewn masks for their volunteers, that'd be greatly appreciated. And again, that can be dropped off at the senior center and we can get it over to Salt. So thank you to the food bank, to Salt Foundation, to our food pantry at Zarephath for all they've been doing to try to help the community. I do want to make a clarification about my comment about bags from last week. There were some inquiries, and I'm excited that there was such a willing to donate reusable bags to the food bank. However, at this point, I was reminded that they would prefer the disposable bags just for safety of everybody that has to handle them. This way, as Mayor Kramer had talked about last week, about having to worry about cleaning, this takes that risk away from it. So if you're a business that has disposable bags and are willing to donate them to the food bank or the Zarephath Food Pantry or Salt Foundation, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and we can figure out a way to get them.
Yep. And Councilman, to clarify that those are new disposable.
Correct, new disposable bags. Yep. So that's why we're sort of hoping that if there's any businesses that are willing to donate them, that they might have had a surplus and then aren't using them in quantity right now. If they're willing to donate a box, that would be greatly appreciated. And that's all I have for this evening.
Great, thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
So I would go to Township Manager Bob Vornlocker.
Thank you, Michael. Just a brief update. So our staffing remains steady on our staggered shifts through the police department, the public works department, and all other offices of the town. Obviously, we're continuing to keep the municipal buildings closed to the public. However, offices are staffed on a daily basis. We continue to remind people that they have to be patient. Staffing is on a skeleton crew as we stagger the offices so that we can keep our employees protected as best we can. It seems to be working. Like I said, our staffing is good right now. I remind people that for all aspects of interaction with the municipal government, the website has all the different ways to contact the offices, phone numbers, email addresses, and we do get inquiries through the website. That's certainly if you have a question, each department on the website has a way to ask that department a question. In addition to those questions going to the staff members in those departments, they also go to me. So I get an opportunity to see every question being asked of the department. And I'm in the office every day. So if it's something that's urgent and I see it, I can act upon it immediately. So if you do have an issue, certainly you can go to the website and submit a question via the page for that particular department, and we can get an answer for you as soon as possible. To echo some comments made previously about personal protective equipment, we are continuing to collect PPE, not only for the staff members in the police department, public works, and the construction inspectors, all those who are forward facing it with the public, but also collecting PPE for the long-term care facilities in the town who also need it desperately. And the one cry that we have heard over and over from our long-term care facilities is the need for hospital gowns. And I know the mayor addressed that on his Facebook page earlier today. But if you have a resource, if that is available to you by some means, then certainly it would be appreciated by all those caring for the people in our long-term care facilities. It's a protective piece of equipment that is kind of exclusively used within the medical facilities. Our police officers have Tyvek suits and they have masks, but the gowns are used And unfortunately, they can only be used for a short period of time. So if you happen to have access to those, you can certainly bring them to the police station. There are police officers, obviously, that can take possession of those, and it would be greatly appreciated. We would distribute them to the long-term care facilities. And that's really all I have right now, Michael.
Thank you, Manager Vornlocker. And let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Where are we? I think that's it for Mr. Mayor. Did you have any comments before we go to some of our guests from local organizations? You're muted.
So on the donations, I do want to stress, if you have money that you want to donate, the town is not the place to do it. The food bank would be the place to do it. If you have food, like a lot of people want to donate pizza for the police. As they have put it, they're getting paid. That's a nice gesture and they appreciate it. But take that money and donate it to the food bank. The manager already talked about the hospital gowns. That would really be a big help. But I do want to do something technical. I'm going to do a screen share here. I've been, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been talking about doubling times, and doubling times is, as the name implies, how long does it take for the number of cases to double? The larger the number, the better. And you can see over time here, starting back at the beginning of last month, it was very short, doubling in a day or two. And the different colors are the different places. And things were getting better and better and better. And New York has shot up. It's now over a month doubling time. These were as of yesterday. I haven't charted today's yet. But unfortunately, and I don't know the reason, Franklin, New Jersey, and Somerset County have all kind of turned around here. We were keeping up pretty much with New York, and New York has shot away, and we've turned around. Now, that may simply be because we're doing more testing now. We opened up a site. Maybe that's got a little bit to do with it. More and more places are doing testing, and that could just be an artifact of that, and it isn't what's really going on. But the point is, I don't want any more lights up there. And this is not the time. It is painful, I know, to stay at home, but I swear to you, I am following the rules. I am staying at home unless I'm going to work or going out to get food or doing something very specific as mayor. I am staying at home, and that's a lot of time at home. So if I can do it, please, you do it. We need this curve to go back to where, back in the upward direction. And I'll comment more as particular things come up.
Thank you, sir. And so we're going to go ahead and just get some brief presentations from leaders of local organizations. This is in response to a number of different inquiries from residents in Franklin. A number of different times I've had people ask about people who who may be food insecure and or homeless. And so I asked the executive director of Elijah's Promise, located in New Brunswick, but serving central New Jersey, including Franklin Township. So Michelle Wilson was kind enough to visit us. So hi, Michelle. And you can unmute yourself if you want.
There we go. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet.
Michael asked me to talk a little about what we're seeing on the ground. For those of you who don't know us, Elijah's Promise is Central Jersey's largest anti-hunger organization. Our tagline is food changes lives, and we use food in all different ways to help the community. But in terms of what we're seeing sort of on the ground right now is we're seeing a dramatic increase in food insecurity and those we're serving. So to give you an example, on a typical day prior to the pandemic, we would serve about 150 lunches, And now on average, we're serving about 320. And those numbers grew closer to 400 while the kids were on spring break in the public schools. So we're serving lunch at our door. Everything's to go now. So we're serving a hot lunch and then dinner bags that guests can take with them. And we're seeing big needs in our social service programs. Our social service case managers are out there just, and today we put out a call, for example, for socks. And they're giving out hygiene kits, socks, all kinds of, masks, everything that we can get out in the community every day. And sort of at the same time, we're being called to serve more. We also are an organization that is dependent on volunteers. We typically have over 3,000 volunteers a year, and we cannot have, because of the pandemic now, volunteers in the kitchen. So our staff is really stepping up and just doing incredible things to meet the needs of these increased demands. Which we expect will continue, right? As we get closer to schools closing this summer, that our numbers will continue to dramatically grow. And so it's happening at the same time too, while we lost our largest fundraising event of the year. And so we continue to fundraise and have been really just, the community has been so supportive that it is challenging out there, but the challenges we know are just at the start. Michael has asked specifically about the homeless population. We continue to serve everyone we can. Currently, there's a moratorium on evictions. There is definitely, I feel like, an expectation that when that moratorium is lifted, that there could be an increase in homeless residents in the community. So we're trying to be as proactive as we can to do everything we can to work with our amazing county partners and other nonprofits in the city and all of Central Jersey to be out in the forefront and try and get ahead of some of the challenges we're seeing.
Are you muted, Michael? Michael, you're muted.
Well, then let me repeat myself, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Just want to say thank you, Michelle, for taking the time to update us, and we appreciate it. So I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you.
All right. I know you got to duck out, so take care.
Thank you so much.
All right, great.
Michael Warnlocker, if I could just.
Yes. Wait, you're muted. You're muted, Bob.
I'm sorry. There's a question that just showed up on the feed that is really directed to Michelle. And
sure.
I read something about it earlier today. The Elijah's Promise is looking for socks.
Yeah, so we did put out an appeal today, and people have been incredible and generous. And so actually, we'll always take more socks. We typically give about 3,000 to 4,000 pairs of socks out a year, but usually in the winter months. And so given all the rain we've been having recently and the lack of access to washing facilities, more of our residents were in need of, or more of our guests were in need of socks. So we've been giving out a lot of socks. I can happily say that we've probably received a donation today. Probably, I think we're around 1,000 pairs. We can always use more, so don't not send them. But it is just an example of how the community has really come forward to help. So that has been a real challenge too in the community. You know, so many things are locked down, right? So usually we can't have folks in our kitchen now. The university's closed. A lot of other places that people access for things like washing their hands and using the bathrooms. They've created a real challenge, and one of the things we're working on now too. So things like washing machines or facilities that they would go, different laundromats or different free programs where you can launder your clothes are not open.
So if someone was interested in donating socks, how would they do that?
So to donate to any of our programs, you can go to our website, which is www.elijahspromise.org. There's a donate button on there, and then also a wish list of different items. The socks can be, some people were sending them today via Amazon, and some people were sending monetary donations, and those donations can go to 18 Nielsen Street in New Brunswick. In addition, donations every day can be dropped off Monday through Friday right at the door, very contactless, from 9 to 1, and then on weekends from 10 to 1. So every day there's somebody sort of at the door, and you can just double park, slide them in. We also have an appeal out for snack bags, which are breakfast bags that are a great project for when people can get out safely to the stores to donate things, and then that have like granola bars and muffins and non-perishable goods.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. We're going to go to Alternatives Incorporated, and then Alex, I'm going to actually ask you to wait so we can get Dr. Apretti's presentation because we're running a little bit late. But I know we have Nancy Good, who's president of Alternatives Incorporated, that serves many counties. Is based in Raritan, but serves many counties and has a number of different residential homes to support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities here in Franklin, as well as homeless mothers and their children. But I'll let them talk about that. We also have Jackie Archer Kennedy, who's director of Somerset programs. So they are ready to go, and they're going to kind of tag team. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you for having us here this evening, Michael and Mayor Kramer. We have been in Somerset County for over 40 years, but we have really strong roots in Franklin Township. As Michael was saying, we have 4 group homes for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. In addition to that, we have 2 permanent housing homes, one that serves 2 individuals and one that serves 4 individuals. And our Franklin House, as Michael had mentioned, is for homeless families. So we developed those homes, so we actually own them, and we also provide services there. We were able to purchase those homes through various funding sources, including Franklin Township Municipal Trust Funds, which helped us purchase one of our group homes, along with Somerset County Home Funds, NJHMFA, foundations, banks, etc. We were actually supposed to have our major fundraising event, our gala, on April 4th in Franklin Township, but obviously because of current situation, we weren't able to do that. So it had to move to a virtual format. We have held for many, many years our annual Holiday Awards dinner at various locations, most recently at the Ukrainian Hall in Franklin Township. So we've had a great partnership with Franklin Township, and we're very happy to be there, very welcoming. So this has been quite a challenge. We developed a COOP plan many years ago, but we did not really figure in a pandemic in that. So as soon as this was all coming together, we wound up meeting and developing our COVID-19 protocol. That includes how we are going to deal with staffing issues with our residents. The primary issue, really, as won't be a surprise to anybody, was securing PPE. So we try to get on that really early. And I mean, that's why we are so grateful to Dr. Karazi and the Razi Health Foundation, because masks have been crucial. We currently and will continue to require all of our staff, when they come on shift, they all have to have their temperatures taken. They have to, wash their hands and go through an entire screening process. And of course, they have to wear PPE. So all of our staff and our residences are wearing masks and gloves. In some cases, they're also wearing gowns. So trying to secure all of that was quite a challenge, and very important to trying to protect the health and safety of our residents as well as our staff members. So that's been our biggest challenge. We also did things like very early on started restricting visits at our group homes. And I know how stressful that has been for the families, but we really felt we needed to do that in the interest of safety. And so at the beginning, we offered the opportunity for family members, if they wanted to take their family member home, but if they chose not to, that through this crisis, for the time being, they can have visits through FaceTime and Skyping. And, that's been a bit stressful, but that is something we really needed to do to protect everybody. We also have nurse calls. So every day our nursing staff calls every program, because they do temperature checks in the morning, and we have an update on that, so we can plan how we're going to deploy our staffing and where we need extra PPE, et cetera. And the other thing that's been really important is communication. So, we can't communicate in all the same ways we used to before. So now, we have weekly communications we send out to families, not only for what's going on generally in the agency, but also specific to their family member and what activities they've been engaged in. So that we've been making posts on social media about, how we're handling and how we're managing the crisis, and also with our board members. the sense of community and the teamwork has been incredible from my staff, the community as a whole. People have been very generous, donating all kinds of things. And again, I mean, we have, you know, a need for masks, gloves, gowns, even, you know, supplies like hand sanitizer, wipes, cleaning and paper products. And right now we're trying to source some face shields because we will be needing them for our homes where we might have somebody who is either COVID positive or is presumptively COVID positive. So again, we're very grateful to Dr. Karazi and the Razi Health Foundation. And Jackie, as Michael said, is our director for all of our Central Region programs. And so we have a number, as I said, in Franklin Township. She's also a resident of Franklin Township. So I'll turn it over to Jackie.
Well, Nancy, you said a lot. I've been with living in Franklin for 19 years. I've been with the agency for 25. I run the 4 group homes in the area, and you know, the biggest challenge for staff is definitely having the PPE. We were very limited before, where they were having to use what little we did have for a long period of time, and no one knows how long this will go. And it's just, we're very thankful for the upgraded mask right now. It has definitely assured the staff that they have better equipment to work with. Our houses are 24-hour staffed. So, you know, there's a rotation of people coming in every 8 hours that have to be screened and have to have the proper, you know, attire for this situation. I also run the recreation. So, and centrally, because I live here, it's easier for me to support all of the venues in town. So we do use the gala we use the Imperia and the Marigold for our gala. We've had our annual awards dinners at the Palace, the Ukrainian. The clients love the pizza in the area. They love Ursilo's and the Amicis and Bella's. They can't wait to go back to the diner. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Jackie and Nancy. Thank you for taking the time to join us and kind of let people know how things are going and a little bit more about alternatives. So we appreciate it. I know I'd like to give a shout out to all the direct support professionals who are working tirelessly in these homes and other residences with many agencies in Franklin and nationally. It's you know, it's a wonderfully rewarding job, but also a tough job, especially these days. So. And they're essential. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention one more thing. I mean, going forward, I mean, it's been tough over the last month, 6 weeks, getting into these new routines and the new normal. But the concern that I'm hearing now has a lot to do with what we're looking at going forward. As there's discussion about, you know, opening up America again, people are very, very concerned, and our staff are very concerned, and we all are. And we want to do it cautiously and carefully, because this virus is not going to go away overnight. And I think that, you know, sometimes people were thinking, oh, it's like one day, you know, it's going to be back to the way it was. And really what we're working on now going forward is how we're going to function in this new normal and what it's going to look like. And so the need for PPE is going to continue. It's not like, you know, a month from now, we think, you know, no more masks, no more this, no more that. And, you know, there's a lot of anxiety around that, but,
Yep.
you know, that's kind of the focus at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nancy. And with regard to that PPE, I know Dr. Karazi is going to speak a little bit about an effort after our next presenter. And speaking of which, one of the things that's going to be pretty critical is testing. So we have Dr. Priyanka Preddy, Associate Director of Clinical Biology and Microbiology, and the virology lab at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, my employer. So shout out there. And but she's leading the COVID testing work there. So we'll turn it over to you, Dr. Preddy. You're muted.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
First of all, thank you for having me. And I know there's been a lot of talk and probably a little bit of confusion of, you know, relating to COVID testing now. So whatever I discuss today, hopefully will add a little bit of clarity to the current COVID testing situation we have going on in the US. So in general, right now in the United States, we have 2 types of tests available for COVID-19 testing. So the first test is the PCR test. So this test basically detects, you know, the genetic material of the virus, right? And the second test is the antibody test, which has generated a lot of traction in the past couple of weeks, and we will talk about both of the tests in a little bit of detail shortly. So first, I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about the PCR test. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a test that detects the genetic material of the virus, right? So if your test is positive for COVID-19 by PCR, this test basically tells you that you're currently infected with the virus, right? Keep in mind this test tells you nothing about your prior exposure to the virus, right? Because if you're infected at one point and your body clears the virus, if you test the patient after 3 months of clearing the virus, there's no virus left over in the body, right? So that's why the PCR test is going to be negative. So the PCR test is extremely accurate, and I'm sure when you've gone to the ED or your physicians or your healthcare providers to get tested for COVID-19, they usually take a swab of, it could be your oropharynx or it could be your of your nostrils. And that swab then comes to a testing lab like mine, where we basically are doing some detective work, like looking for bits and pieces of the genetic material of the virus in that swab specimen that comes from the patient to our lab, right? So if there is a virus present in that swab specimen that comes out of, from your nasal swab or your oral swab, the test is very accurate in identifying the virus, right? So if your test is positive, if your PCR test is positive for COVID-19, you can be extremely confident of the results. There's no ifs, whats, and buts about the result, right? The utility of the test is very clear, and the interpretation of the results very clear as well with PCR testing. However, that's not the case with the antibody testing, right? That's being talked about in the media recently. So let me just take a step back and explain what antibodies really are, right? So antibodies are these proteins that are made by our bodies when we see any foreign object, right? For example, in this case, if our body is exposed to virus, in this case, COVID-19, then our body generates a protein called antibodies, right? So once your body makes these antibodies against the virus, it has the potential, and I want to emphasize the word potential here, because we don't know the role of antibody testing right now, right? So if your body makes these antibodies, it has the potential to provide protection against this virus for the rest of your life, right? However, at this point, we don't know that for sure. So the importance of antibodies for some other viral infections, like for example, measles, has been very well studied, right? So if you have antibodies against measles virus, you know that a certain level of antibodies will give you protection, right? It will protect you from being reinfected in the future. And we also know that the antibodies last in your body for a while. So in case of measles virus, the role of antibodies and the importance is very well studied, right? And that's because the virus has been with us for a very long time. However, the role of antibodies for some other viruses, like for influenza, the seasonal flu virus, is not very well understood, because you may generate antibody responses to the seasonal flu virus this season. However, those antibodies do not provide protection against the flu virus coming from the next season, right? So that's why we need to get vaccinated again every year for flu virus. So the reason why I'm talking about antibody testing back and forth is because the role of antibody testing for COVID-19 at this point is not very well understood, right? And that's because the virus is so new. It's been with us for the last couple of months, and the scientific community is learning something new about the virus every day, right? So if we detect antibodies against COVID virus at this point, we can reliably only say that you've been exposed. Yes, you've been exposed to the virus. That's the only thing we can say right now, right? You need to keep in mind that the antibody testing for COVID-19 is still in infancy at this point, right? And as such, there is much more to be learned over the next couple of weeks about the added utility of the antibody testing for as it relates to COVID-19. We don't know if the antibodies provide protection from being reinfected again. It could, but we don't know the answer to that question right now. We also don't know that the antibodies will last in your body for next weeks, months, or years. Those two questions are very important and are currently being explored and investigated in the scientific community right now. So in summary, there are two kinds of tests for COVID-19. One of them is a PCR test. It's very accurate, it's very reliable, and a PCR test is a measure of the current infection, right? The second test is the antibody test. And as of now, all we can tell you is if you're positive for the antibody test, it's just a measure of past exposure. This testing is, as I mentioned earlier, for antibody testing is still in infancy, and there's much more to be learned about antibody testing in the next couple of weeks.
So doctor, there's more than one antibody test out there, is that correct?
Yes.
And can you talk about the differences, not between a particular test and another, but in general, the field of antibody tests?
Sure. So there are two different kinds, broadly speaking, there are two different kinds of antibodies. The first kind of antibody is called the IgM. It's called immunoglobulin type M. And that antibody is usually produced, within a couple of days of being infected, right? So that antibody comes in very quickly. And the second type of antibody is called IgG, or type G kind of antibodies. And that's produced, a little bit later than the IgM antibody. And the IgM antibody usually goes up and it goes down, right? Whereas the IgG antibody, once it's detected in the body, it usually stays in your body for a long time. And if it stays around for a long time, it's supposed to provide some level of protection in the future.
So what would it mean to you if someone who just had a lot of testing available to them on the same day had the swab test, the PCR test, and the antibody test, and the swab test was negative, but the antibody test was positive? One, could that happen? And two, what does it mean?
Yeah, so yes, that could happen, right? So if the swab test is positive, if it's negative, that means you have no detectable viral particles in your body, right? And if the antibody test, meaning if the IgG is positive, then that means you don't have, if the PCR test is negative and antibody test IgG is positive, it basically tells you you don't have the active virus in your body. However, you may have been exposed to the virus in the distant past, like a couple of weeks, a month ago.
Okay, so the antibody test is more, did you have it? And you could possibly still have it. And the PCR test is really strictly, do you have it now?
Yeah, exactly. That's what exactly it is. I also want to point out that in the United States, testing is very tightly regulated by the FDA. So that's why we have so much confidence in our test results, because it's very well vetted by the FDA. So the PCR tests have been very well vetted by the FDA. However, the problem we are facing right now with the antibody testing is there's so many antibody tests that have come to the market without any good data. A lot of the companies have not submitted data to the FDA. So the test results could be questionable. It depends on what kind of antibody testing you're using. However, that's not the case with the PCR test.
So in normal times, these antibody tests would have to go to the FDA, but because this is an emergency, they've relaxed their rules. Is that right?
Yes, because almost all the PCR tests that are in the market right now that have been vetted by the FDA. So we trust the data. Whereas with this antibody test, I think there have only been 4 or 5 out of hundreds of antibody tests that have been vetted by the FDA. So you have to be careful about where you're getting your antibody test results from.
Are you knowledgeable of, and do you have an opinion on the home test?
So I know that the FDA, I think they approved a home collection kit for the PCR test. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, so I think these collection kits are basically, they're sending you swabs that you can just, swab your both nares and just put the swab back in the liquid that they send you and put it in the mail. That's my understanding. And it's just a collection kit. You're not actually testing for the virus in your home. You're just collecting your samples and sending the samples to a centralized lab that actually does the testing.
Okay. All right, we can open it up to the press. What I want to preface is she is a doctor. Her expertise and the reason we had her on is because she knows about the testing. She doesn't treat patients, so it would not be fair to ask her those particular questions, but she's an expert in the testing. So PJ, you've had your virtual hand up. So if you unmute yourself, I'll unmute you.
Okay.
You're unmuted.
One thing first, Mr. Mayor, is just just reserve the questions for Dr. Apreti out of respect for her time, and any other questions the panelists will follow. So you have it, PJ.
Okay, thank you.
These are questions for Dr. Apreti.
Yes, exactly.
You're-
Are there any results?
You're hard to hear, PJ.
I'm hardly here. All right. How do I unhardly hear myself?
You're
Well, that's a
better.
little better. That's one way.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I had it fairly high up. I was wondering, first of all, what the doctor's opinion is of as far as efficacy of the nasal testing versus the saliva testing.
So that's an
Is
excellent.
one preferable, or is
That's-
one more revealing?
So that's an excellent question, and that's $1 million question right now. And to answer the question right now, we don't have the answer to that. So FDA and CDC are telling us right now that the nasopharyngeal swab is the gold standard right now. So what that means is, when you put the swab in your nose, it has to go deep down in your nasopharynx. So that's the gold standard. That's the best specimen type. However, those swabs there's a supply chain issues with that. So a lot of people are moving to either just nasal swabs or just collecting the saliva. To answer your question, which one is better between nasal swab and saliva, we don't know at this point. I think the jury is still out on that. And there are a lot of other researchers actually looking into that question, because if saliva is actually a good sample, then that solves a lot of problem, because we have a huge supply chain issues with getting swabs at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know the answer to that question as of now.
Thank you. And this seems like an obvious question to me, but when someone were to come in for a saliva test, are they advised that prior to this testing, don't drink coffee, don't smoke, don't eat something, and would that compromise the saliva results with any of those factors?
I don't know the answer to that question. So my lab right now does not do the saliva testing. We just test the swabs, oropharyngeal swab, nasal swabs, and nasopharyngeal swabs. We haven't offered testing in saliva yet. So I know there's a lab at Rutgers that's offering that test. I'm not very familiar with that test that they do in the lab.
Okay. And how frequently do you recommend testing? Someone could theoretically have a negative result and show no virus present, become exposed maybe 2 or 3 weeks later. I'm assuming that it's advisable to then retest if symptoms appear, but is there a protocol and advisory as to that?
I am not aware of any protocol for retesting, because keep in mind that, right? So you could be just infectious for a certain length of time, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but after that you could still be shedding dead virus, and you're not infectious, but the PCR test is detecting the broken up genetic material of the virus. So that's why, given the fact that the resources are so limited for testing and for collection kits, we usually, if it's not clinically indicated, we usually advise our providers to not retest for that reason.
All right, I
But-
think that's
But if another
go ahead.
issue is, I mean, if you are tested and it's negative, the next day you could go out and be exposed. It doesn't mean that's it, you're done, you can't ever get the virus. It's, the day begins anew every day if you've not had any antibodies to it. So if you later develop symptoms after you've been tested, then you may need retesting and should talk to your doctor.
Exactly. Just one more follow-up on the antibodies. How long does it take for antibodies to develop after you may have been exposed and or actually had the virus and recovered?
So that's a great question. So studies, from China and other places and from Germany are showing that you start developing antibodies after 10 days of being exposed. So let's say if you're exposed today, then you have detectable level of IgM and IgG antibodies later, like after 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
10 to 14 days is after, that's when you call you seroconvert, meaning you start detecting antibodies on average.
Okay. And is there any length of time that the antibodies exist for and offer protection? Or is that too soon to ask?
That's the $1 million question, right?
Okay.
I think if they do if we do mount a protective antibody response, then that's a very good news, right? And if those protective antibodies do last for a long time, that's even better. Those two questions, I think the jury is still out on that right now. I don't think we know enough at this point.
Okay. Well,
Somehow you got muted again, PJ. Michael, you're muted.
I just wanted to say thank you to the doctor for all of the work that he's doing.
Of course.
Malik, if you want to pick up any questions.
Thank you, PJ.
Thank you, PJ.
Thanks.
You're
I
muted.
Thanks. I didn't have too many questions except for one. What would be the number one and two symptoms that someone will exhibit to warrant them going into their doctor's office or a hospital or a testing site to get tested? Because testing is very limited. You don't really want anyone and everyone going out to get testing. But what are some things that someone should look for in themselves to warrant them looking for a test?
So Dr. Upreti is really more on analyzing the test, but if you feel comfortable answering that, go ahead.
I think the CDC's, I would refer you to the CDC's website, and I think they have outlined the clear signs and symptoms like fever, shortness of breath. Those are the common symptoms. And I think CDC has very good resources of, what are the common symptoms and, when you should seek, call a provider and seek medical help.
Fever, fatigue, and shortness of breath are the three top symptoms.
And earlier you had mentioned that the PCR is a very accurate test. How accurate is it? And usually if there is an error or if there is any errors, like what is it usually attributed to most?
So it's a pretty accurate test, meaning like analytically, if you have a virus in the swab, then you can the sensitivity of the test is very good. It's upward of 90%, right? So in that sense, the test is very accurate. And sometimes you're right, like the test does not work. Like there's some things in a swab that may clog up the PCR reaction and the test may not work. If that's the case, then we usually call the healthcare worker who collected the sample and say, hey, this test is invalid. Please recollect another sample if possible. And that usually happens like in our hands, like less than 1% of the time. So this PCR test is very accurate and very robust. The problem is it's a complicated test. So that's why, we can't make millions and millions of tests, because of that. It's a very complicated test, but very accurate.
So, one second, I just noticed someone was asking, when is everyone going to be tested? Again, that's not a test for a question for Dr. Upreti. That's a test for government that, she'll analyze all the tests you give her, but it's when are the tests out there and when does she get the equipment to analyze them? Go ahead, Malik.
It just typically from your experience, once a person develops any, and this is going back to the antibody, antibody question, once they usually are exposed in that virus, can they normally be reinfected, or is this something that we should kind of pay attention to with the tests that will be going over for the next few weeks?
Yeah, I think that's $1 million question, and the jury is still out on that. And that's something the scientists are very, learning, investigating very eagerly. At this point, if it's a reliable antibody test, if it's positive, all you can really say at this point is yes, you've been exposed to COVID-19, and that's it. We cannot say at this point, we don't have enough scientific evidence to say this antibody provides protection for sure. Again, antibody testing is for COVID-19 in infancy, and we're still learning more about this test every day.
What is the usual timeline to figure that out for normal viruses in the past?
Figure out what, sorry.
What's the timeline like normally with other viruses? What has been the amount of time that it takes to discover that? Is there an estimated time, or each virus is kind of different, obviously?
Each virus is kind of different. If it's a DNA virus, then the virus is very stable in its genetic material, meaning it does not mutate very fast. So, the protein it expresses, it's constant. So once you make antibodies, it's there. It does not change very fast. Whereas with RNA viruses like HIV, influenza, coronaviruses, the virus mutates very fast. So that's why we don't know. We don't know for sure how long it takes. Hopefully soon. I mean, the scientific community has poured every bit of their strength into answering that question, and hopefully we have an answer sooner than later for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Malik. And a couple questions. I'm just going to pull Dr. Appretti from our comments on our Facebook feed where we're live streaming. There was a question about whether there's any difference in testing for adults versus children, or is it standard across ages?
It's standard across age. Like a PCR, from a lab's perspective, a PCR test on a swab is a PCR test irrespective of the age, and same thing for serology as well.
And one other, I don't think you mentioned, but one other question was around the PCR test and how and reliability and how it detects live versus dead virus.
Yeah, so PCR test, like I said, if it's a good sample, right? Meaning if the swab actually did get hold of some of the virus in the in the nares or in the oropharynx, if you have viral particles in the swab, then the test is very accurate. Like it will detect it over 95% of the time. And most of the PCR tests that are done in the lab. I can't say that about some of the point of care PCR tests that are being done right now. I think people are still looking into the data for that, but most of the tests that we do in my lab, are extremely, like the PCR test is very reliable and accurate.
So let me just interject there. So viruses are not alive. They're not considered to be alive. You can talk about whether they're viable or not viable, because you could have a piece of a virus, and if it's the genetic material, it would test positive, even if that virus isn't viable at the time. Viruses are little robots, little machines that jump in there and use our own bodies, our own cellular mechanisms to do their nasty work. So you can test positive without a viable virus, though that would be relatively infrequent. But it's important to not think of them as alive. Bill, Mr. Bowman, did you have anything?
I unmuted you, Bill. Did you have anything? Oh, you muted yourself, I think. Hold on. 1 second. Let me do it. How about now?
I'm fine. Thank you very much.
So you're good? Okay, thank you. All right.
Dr. Appretti, did you have anything else for us?
No, that's all for now. We're very excited and looking, very eager to learn more about the antibody testing. I know there's a lot of interest from the community and a lot of interest and effort being poured into from the scientific community as well. So if we learn more, which I'm sure we'll do about antibody testing in the next couple of weeks, I'll be happy to share more as we learn more as we go,
So I'm very appreciative of your time. I didn't even ask anyone for her to be on until about 4 o'clock this afternoon. So she really jumped up with very little notice. And I'm also very impressed with the questions that were asked. They were very, very good questions. Doctor, feel free to sign off. You don't have to stay on for the rest of it. And thank you once again.
All right, thank you for having me. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, Doctor.
Stay safe.
Okay, thanks everyone. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to mute you, Dr. Preddy. Thank you. And I'm going to go and move over to Dr. Alex Karazi, who's president of the Razi Health Foundation and also a township resident and president of the Franklin Township Interfaith Council. And before you start, Alex, I just want to let people know who are listening that we will be having a virtual ceremony for a memorial that's been installed in the township that Reverend George Martinari is going to preside over. And so if they want to stay for that, we would appreciate it. But go ahead and take it away, Dr. Karazi.
Thank you very much, Michael. And Mr. Mayor, I have three short items that I want to mention. The first one, as Michael alluded to, is the memorial. As we all know, the COVID-19 and the required physical distances have disrupted our personal, religious, and community rituals of mourning and funerals. And we have not been able to go to really any funerals, and the family members have not been able to grieve their loved ones the way they do if they die. So because of that, we wanted to somehow recognize and send a message that to each grieving family that we know and we care, that we are thinking and praying for them. And we also wanted to let them know that as a community, we remember them and we pray for them. And because of these concerns, we thought that will be good if we have some sort of a memorial. And Michael suggested that we would put some lights around the gazebo. And when a person lost because of COVID-19, we will lit a light. And tonight you will see that lightning event. The second item that I wanted to briefly touch is the donations that we gave to several hospitals, both here in New York and also several other places. There was a donation of 4,000 N95 masks, and we distributed that to different houses of places that they take care of community members, from food bank to other places, as well as the hospitals. And we, as the Franklin Township Interfaith Council, have initiated a program to collect donations so we can buy additional supplies in the future. So I wanted to let everybody know that if anybody's interested to make any donation, doesn't matter how much, they can visit our website at ftwpic.faith. That's Franklin Township Interfaith Council.faith. That's the abbreviation for it. The third and the last item that I want to mention is that you've heard that there's a shortage of food at the food bank. They're looking for donations. We've also heard that over 1,200 people or families are served during April, and they're going to be probably more. And because of that, we have also initiated a program to encourage community members to sponsor families in Franklin Township. For $3 a day, they can feed a family of 3. For $20, they can feed a family for 1 week. And for $85, they can feed a family for 1 month. And I also wanted to recognize that the month of Ramadan is coming, which is going to be starting tomorrow. And last year during the Ramadan, the Franklin Township Muslim communities, they sponsored 100 families. So, but we're hoping that this year we will not only, they will not only sponsor 100 families, but hopefully with the help of other community members, we'll be able to sponsor more families, and all the donation will go to food bank, of course. Again, those are the 3 items I want to mention, and I want to thank everybody in the community for their help. Again, please visit our website, ftwpic.faith, and be generous towards these two great efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Karazi.
Thank you,
So-
Alex. Those numbers of how little money feeds so many people are really impressive.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, what I'd like to do is just see if there are any other questions for the panel from the press, or I'm not seeing too much on the Facebook feed, but if there are any other questions before we move on to our lighting ceremony, I wanted to open them up now. Is there anything, Bill or Malik or PJ? You're good? Okay. And I don't think I see, I think we're okay. Jessica, if I miss anything, feel free to text me. We have Jessica Levin Sullivan, as she has every week, has been annotating on Facebook, so we do appreciate that. It's a great help. Okay, no, I think we're good. So, Mr. Mayor, if I don't know if you wanted to start off with anything, but we'll move to Reverend Martinari after you do. You're muted. You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
I could hear myself fine. At the end, I do want to do something that I think I should save to the end because it involves screen sharing, and that's untried territory technically for us. So in case it ends the thing, we'll do that at the end. We're about to talk about the memorial at the gazebo. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
So I just really want to thank Michael, Alex, and
Franklin Township Interfaith Council.
Yes, thank you.
I got your back.
Good. For their work on this. I helped a little bit. Mr. Vornlacher helped a little bit, but really it's you guys that have done this work, and it's a fantastic idea, and we wouldn't have it without you guys. So I try to be a statesman, not a politician. Politicians take credit for anything that happens while they were in the room. I try to give credit where credit's due, and it's due to you guys. So go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so I'm going to ask Reverend Martinari to unmute, and you're there. So please begin.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the chance to be a part of this. We've heard tonight the explanation of the meaning of the memorial as we pay tribute to those who have been lost, and keep them in our prayers, those who are grieving, and just the needs of our world. So I invite you to bow with me as we seek God's healing for our world and God's comfort for our hearts. Would you please pray with me? Oh God, thank you that we may call upon your loving heart and your strong arms at such a time as this. Our world is reeling in chaos and confusion, in anxiety and apprehension, in grief, in sorrow, in the loneliness of isolation from the COVID pandemic burst upon our nations. How we call upon you for the graces of healing for those who are ill, of comfort for those who mourn, of strength for those who give tirelessly of themselves for the care of others, of insight for those who do research to find a vaccine, of wisdom for those who must make governing decisions, of provision for those who are experiencing economic hardship, of patience for all of us as we wait this out. This evening, as we shine these lights of tribute in memory of those who have passed from this illness, we pause to thank you for their lives, for the blessings they have been to family and friends, for contributions they have made where they have lived, gone to school, worked, volunteered, wherever each of their lives has blessed the life of someone else. We ask your special presence and peace for their loved ones. Ease their burden of sorrow and uphold and sustain them with the power of your love, we pray. May the memories of those who have passed inspire us to greater heights of compassion for those around us, to more willing acts of kindness toward our neighbor, to deeper appreciation of how interconnected we are. May the calming and comforting glow of these lights help us also aim to be light in the darkness, to shine with your love and your goodness and your peace. Tonight, this is our prayer in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Martinari.
That was beautiful, and those pictures are beautiful, sad at the same time. Too many lights, way too many lights. I do want to say, you know, with most memorials like this, often people will leave notes or flowers. Due to the nature of what we're suffering now, another pain we have to suffer, I think I'm going to ask you not to do those things. Someone else is going to have to pick them up. We have no idea how long they've been there, so whether they conceivably could still have virus on them. I don't know how long a virus lasts on a flower. So please refrain from doing that. Just another sacrifice we have to make. Take solace in the lights as you can. And thank you again, guys, for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I may, I just wanted to add thanks to the Franklin Township Interfaith Council. You know, I have a deep appreciation, you know, being the son of someone who's very active in interfaith efforts in a number of different places, but particularly in Franklin, where, you know, just as when the gazebo was built to bring our community together, you all and your partnership and collaboration serves to do the same, and embracing and including all faiths and secular humanists as well. And so thank you for sponsoring and supporting the memorial. And we are committed that each day, as if we learn of new deaths due to COVID, a light will shine that night for them.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. And Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that in lieu of flowers, if anybody wants to do it, they can make a donation for us to buy some protective equipment to prevent the spread and hopefully save lives. You know, we all trying to save lives. And as you mentioned it, there's no greater point of pride than that. And thank you for everybody. Thank you, Michael.
That's an excellent idea.
Yep. And one more thing, Mr. Mayor, and just in terms of what the Razi Health Foundation has done, as someone who's been delivery boy on a few of these things, I know that, you know, there are hospitals both in our area, in New York. There are organizations like Elijah's Promise, the Franklin Food Bank, who have been extremely thankful for those donations of PPE, as well as organizations that serve homeless and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And today, and I know that the mayor had heard about a need from one of our neighboring towns, Bound Brook. So both previously and today, we delivered PPE to their municipal building, and I know they were deeply appreciative of that. So thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it to you then, Mr. Mayor, to sign us out.
Okay, thank you. And anyone who argues with the fact that I'm helping another town, as Michael pointed out, this virus doesn't know borders. Why should we? And if you want a Franklin excuse for it, there's plenty of traffic between Franklin and Bound Brook. So when we're helping them, we're helping ourselves. So please stay at home. It really makes a difference. I don't want any more lights. Unfortunately, there will be lights, but let's keep as few of them as possible. Thank you, Michael. I'll let you end it.
Okay, thank you and good night, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks, panel, for being here.